Yeah, do you want to go over those items that Timon has asked for, and we'll try to help out with those?
So these are something that I just pasted in based on a email that I think Timon just sent to you and I, Scott. Uh,
Okay, yeah, I haven't read it yet.
just saying that he has a conflict, he can't make it today, but these are the things that are on his mind. Um, so I just pasted them in there.
Just a minute. Sean is actually in he is in the Teams version of this meeting. Let me quickly go over there and let him know that he is by
I think he
himself.
dropped already.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully he's on his way here. Okay, anyway, yeah, so you posted these, Andy. So yeah, we outlined two positions that they want to hire for last week. One of them was DevOps position. The other one was programmer position. Yeah, so they're going to talk about who should be on the interview team. Zach and I have already interviewed a few people. I guess I've only interviewed one, but Zach has interviewed many. So yeah, we're going to help out with ONF staff, which in turn will help us. Next up, others to invite to the TST. So I think we did talk about Tajit, or not Tajit, Kajit. I thought they were going to, we were going to get like a presentation from them outside of the TST sometime over the last week or this week. Do we still know about that?
Hi, this is Eric Morrell. There's a meeting with them on tomorrow afternoon. It is at 2 p.m. Central Time, which is noon West Coast time.
Yeah, I could probably do that. And is this like a meeting for them to present like an overview of what they do, or is this just a regularly scheduled meeting you have with them?
So it's not a regularly scheduled meeting. It's to go through this list that they've shared with us. And then there might be even a discussion later in the call around maybe a nomination to the Aether TST that
Sure.
they'd like to make.
Yeah, well, please invite me to that one, noon tomorrow. I should have an opening there. Yeah.
Okay, and this is Ray talking?
This is Scott.
Oh, Scott. I'm sorry, Scott. Okay, we'll do.
Yeah, I don't think Eric, you and we never really talked that much, so you're probably not that familiar with my voice.
I'm not. No problem. I'll put you on here in just a moment.
Yeah, and anyone else who is looking at, please ask Eric for an invite. I know absolutely nothing about Khajiit myself, so it will be useful for me to learn something. And then you said the other one here is GS Lab. Yeah, I mean the GS Lab guys, they were good guys. I would be happy with them. So when we say invite to the TST, this is inviting them to participate in TST, or is this about inviting them to join as members of the TST?
So maybe make a nomination to have somebody be a part of the TST?
Right, for GS Lab and for Khajiit.
Correct.
Okay. And then the other thing we should discuss is, as we add people, do we want to reduce Intel people? I mean, is there a certain size you are aiming for the TST, or is it fine to grow it a little bit? Does anyone have a preference? Sounds like nobody has a preference. I'm fine with just growing it a bit, and then maybe some Intel people slowly leave out over time. So we will propose nominating one person each from GS Lab and Khajiit. Yeah, then review the current pipeline for those trying to deploy either, continuing to try to knock down blockers. So yeah, it sounds like Andy's already got his next topic here is going to cover most of this, which is the blockers and stuff that people have been running into.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, Andy, if you want to take it away with this next topic, which is the deployment brigade.
Sure. So I tried to summarize, the interactions that I, mostly me, have been having on Slack with community members the last couple of weeks since the last meeting. And I'll just quickly kind of walk through some of the issues. One person, Amit, was trying to bring up the 4G Ether in a box without hardware and having difficulty with OAI SIM, getting that built. I think the issue there was he just had some error the first time. I don't know why, but then it was the bad image was in the cache and it kept being used. So I was able to help him out there to rebuild it, and then everything worked. And so I will add some documentation on how to do that if you hit that particular issue. Somebody else was able to get 5G with hardware deployed, which is good because that's not even really documented yet. But he was then asking about how to set up a monitoring stack for it. Right now, there's only a 4G monitoring stack that we have for Ether in general. This is not just an Ether in a box limitation. So when he was asking about the roadmap for 5G monitoring, and I pointed him to Aether TST, that might be a good place to discuss Ether roadmap. It seems like maybe the TST could be a little bit more kind of forthcoming with the community about what is the roadmap and when things might, new work might happen. Let's see, somebody.
So just a question on the 5G monitoring. So is it the case that like Prometheus endpoints aren't even exposed, or are they exposed and we just need dashboards, or do we just not even know?
I don't think we've looked into it a lot. I think there are Prometheus metrics being exposed by the services, but we have not even taken a look at those metrics. And so we don't have any idea about,
Right.
whether, if they're the same as the 4G metrics, if they're totally different. I expect they would probably be kind of the same, but yeah, we don't have any familiarity with those. So yeah, we would need to collect the metrics and then figure out how to, put them into dashboards.
Yeah, and this would be someone like AJ who would probably know what to do and how to get even started on that. Probably
Yeah.
someone with his knowledge set.
Or probably somebody like me who's used to dealing with the 4D metrics and dashboards. But,
Right.
I don't know that I actually have the time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Just going down the list, a couple of people have asked about, can you run the Ether in a box with hardware using the 4G and the 5G cores simultaneously? And the answer is no, not right now, but that could be added if we wanted to. And I think it's maybe not too hard. Like maybe this would be a good project for a new ONF staff member that's coming on and wants to get familiar with Ether in a box. Maybe could do this work. I don't think it's that critical to anybody, but there have been inquiries about it. So it might be something that we would think about.
So would that include handing up and handing down as well?
What? I'm sorry?
Taking a call, a 4G call, handing it up to 5G and back down?
No, Eric, no. So Andy is just talking about deploying both the things simultaneously, but not about the handovers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's right. Let's see, next on the list, somebody was trying to set up a Ether edge and Ether core that were separate, that the Ether edge was running, on their local hardware, and then the Ether core was running in the cloud. And they had some kind of use case for this in their lab. They were following the instructions that it currently exists on the Ether docs site, but those instructions, I think, are for setting up an ONF managed Ether edge and connecting it to the ONF managed central cloud. And so it talks about things like, how to add your site to the ONF VPN and things like that. And so he was running into trouble when he was trying to follow those instructions. So I think those are kind of out of date now. I don't think we want people in the future to be following those instructions. So somebody, I guess, needs to maybe take a look at those and see if they can be changed to support people that want to duplicate ONF's setup, but not necessarily, add their edge to the ONF managed infrastructure. So I don't know who would do that. That kind of goes a little bit beyond Ether in a box. Maybe it's not something that we really need to focus on right now, but there are people that are asking about that. Let's see, I think the final thing was that someone set up Ether in a box on hardware and did some performance testing and noticed that the performance was pretty bad. I explained to him that performance and scalability weren't really goals of Ether in a box. It's more just to see how all of the pieces fit together.
Did they update the config and try, or even after that, like we could have limitations in how we have configured the slice Mbps and the overall QoS. That could also be a reason.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know if I didn't encourage him to try anything in particular. I just said that performance and scalability were not really goals of Ether in a box on hardware, and left it at that. I updated the documentation to try to make that clear.
Okay.
If we think that people should be seeing reasonable performance on Ether in a box, I guess we could try to figure out what the bottleneck is and help, change the configuration so that the performance is better, but I didn't try to do that.
Okay.
I think that one thing, I know that Hyun Soon worked on a document describing an Ether standalone edge. And I think that uses, sets up SRIOV and does a lot of things that Ether in a box doesn't try to do that might lead to better performance. But I don't know the status of that document, if it's actually available to the public or not. I didn't see it on our docs site, so I'm not sure like where that stands, but that might be something to point people to if they need better performance than like a megabit per second or whatever this guy said he was getting. So I think that's basically it for what people are blocked on. And I have been updating the documentation as I have time based on where people are confused. So it has been improving a little bit, but there's still plenty more that could be done.
Yeah, it seems like there's a fair amount of interest from people, which is good.
Oh, there is one last thing that I noticed, which was somebody was reporting issues with the UPF starting. We've seen a few people have UPF startup issues. I don't think we've ever really been able to diagnose what the problems are. So it's not clear how to move forward with that. But this particular guy who I was talking to that has the UPF issues, he seems like a pretty good guy. He's a PhD student in somewhere in Greece, I think, and he knows, people from our ancient past, like Serge Fedita, and so he might be a decent guy to work with if we want to try to get to the bottom of why the UPF doesn't seem to work in certain environments. But I don't have any more to say there, just then, it could possibly be a good thing to investigate.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, thank you for the update on this, Andy, and thank you for minding the channel. You and others who've been helping out there, that's great. Anything else more to discuss on the sort of deployment and usability brigade?
That's all I had.
Yeah, so the next thing I had on the list was staffing update. We've heard rumors that you guys have filled at least one position. Do you have someone coming on that you're able to talk about? Well, I'm not hearing anyone from ONF, so I'll assume not.
So Scott, there is, but I don't know the particulars.
Okay.
There have been a couple, I believe there have been 2 offers accepted, but I don't know any particulars.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Well, we'll be
yeah.
anxious to hear more.
There's 2 folks who have had offers out. Both have accepted. One is contingent on a visa being completed. But they're both supposed to start, I believe, the first week of August. I don't recall, and I was trying to find this earlier because we've discussed with Timon if they're taking on the Aether or some other aspects of the CI/CD release position for other projects. I can't recall if these guys are fulfilling the ones for Aether. I think the Aether one might still be in process.
Well, there might be another Aether one, but one of them definitely was an Aether. And Timon may have changed his mind. I mean,
I know.
this is not authoritative. One of them was supposed to step into Aether CI/CD.
Yeah, and I think that's what I recall as well, Larry. But again, we've had so many conversations about it. I was trying to dig up maybe an email thread that had it in writing, and I couldn't find it. But either way, I think we're getting quite close. We have 3 other strong candidates for the remaining positions. So I think we're going to get all 5 filled relatively soon. And then we did open 2 additional positions as well that we've been getting quite a bit of applicants for. So actually later today, I have a meeting with Timon to run through those. And he's been in Turkey all of last week for the broadband area board meeting. So I don't think he's had a chance to review them yet.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I mean, we're happy to see more people coming online over there that we can work with. Next up, I had on here just some more points, things we could talk about. The release timeline. I don't think at Intel we've done anything to further along the Aether release, so really nothing has changed other than maybe a little bit of progress getting staging and other resources online. Did anyone else have anything to talk about regarding release timeline? Including if you have any goals of when you would like to see a release.
So staging is up, that's what you said, Scott?
I think it is coming on. So I don't remember if Hung Wei had an update on it today, but you know, they were bringing it online. So, you know, first you have to bring on the rancher, then you have to bring on the various the edge deployment and all of that. So I think progress is being made. I can't say if it's done yet or it's, you know, in some state that's close to done. Are you aware of anything more on it, Zach?
Sorry, yeah, I can just give more context about the staging.
Sure.
So for the staging, yeah, I would say 90% done. So right now, Houston is doing the base UPF, and once we have the base UPF, we will check the end-to-end connectivity for the Raspberry Pi and the B, and I think that's all. But we may have the other issues about GitOps deployment, because right now everything is in Intel's Google Cloud, and you should have the access to Intel's Google Cloud to configure the Git repo. So we should add more people if we want to cooperate with the staging part.
And this is for Pronto. This isn't for, okay.
Yeah, for Pronto only.
Okay, and so I don't think everybody that's if that's totally inside Pronto at this point, which while a consumer of Ether is not the primary driver of Ether, other than for testing. Is that accurate?
Hmm?
I'm sorry, Zach, your point again?
So the while we need Pronto up to validate Ether releases, that's correct, and that's the reason why we're waiting on this.
Well, we need staging. We need staging and one production site. So,
and so those are all inside Pronto at this point.
Yeah, well, we have, yeah, staging is inside Pronto. I don't know. Well, I guess the Stanford, the demo pod we left at Stanford, that's also a Pronto site. I have not checked in on that thing to see how healthy it is. But yeah, we can't really do a release without being able to stage it and soak it and actually test it someplace first. So I think first, you know, we need staging online, then we need that Stanford pod that we were using upgraded to the release. Is that the process that you would typically follow, Andy?
Right, yeah, we would do staging first and then Menlo production, which I guess is now Stanford demo pod, and then Pronto as a whole. I mean, that's how the deployment chain would work. Where would a release come in that process? Yeah, probably before Pronto deployment, but after we had gone to staging and our like Menlo production deployment. So yeah, I agree.
Okay, and as far as we know, I have not looked at the Stanford demo pod in a while. Is it still up and healthy?
Oh, not really. I don't think nobody's been looking at it really.
Yeah, it has its own dashboard, which kind of causes us to not notice it like we do the others.
Yeah, I guess I've noticed that it hasn't been working, but if nobody else cares, then you know, I figured we can just let it be in that state until we decide to care.
Yeah, Stanford demo pod is currently not working. Need time to validate the release, but no need Yeah, it seems like there's just no need to get it back online with an old release. We might as well get it back online when we push the new release to it. Would that, you would agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, I think that works for me.
Yeah. Next up, do we have anything more on the release timeline people would like to discuss? Next up would be Ether roadmap. Andy, you mentioned people were looking for a roadmap and we don't have one.
Yeah.
Who's going to drive a roadmap?
Who would execute on a roadmap? Who'd be writing the code?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do have for the SD core. So,
Well, just generally, the TST establishes the roadmap.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the people on the call are executing. Everybody bringing the requirements that they hear from the community and then hashing out a priority on it.
So yeah, those of us who are TST members are not hearing a lot of requirements. I guess maybe that's where it breaks down a little bit, is that, you know, the TST is composed mostly of Intel people, and it seems like you know, ONF is probably hearing the most about requirements from Khajiit and others, I would think.
Well, that and what you heard from Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are interested more in 5G than 4G, but that's, you know, where we have placed less time, less emphasis in the past, at least with Ether deployment and, you know, building monitoring dashboards and things like that. So I think 5G stuff on the roadmap would satisfy the community.
Yeah. So priorities.
That's as informed as we've ever been.
Seems of interest. I mean, that's kind of like where it was trending when we did the transition, I suppose. So nobody is asking for, other than 5G, nobody's asking for additional features. Nobody wants stuff around application filtering or anything like that.
Not
5G and ease of deployment.
Yeah.
Ease of deployment.
Yeah.
Are the two, and you know, Ether in a box is step one on ease of deployment, but maybe Andy has a better sense here. What is it that people want to do just beyond Ether in a box? Well, 5G is certainly one of them.
Yeah, 5G, and I think better performance, better scalability.
And then Eric, you mentioned handoff from 4G to 5G. Is that like completely out of scope for anything we would be doing in the near term?
No,
I mean,
that was more a question for my own information.
Okay.
yes, Scott, it requires a lot of changes.
Okay.
And that's the reason we are keeping it out of scope. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like that one would be a ways down. So documentation of setting up production sites, is that anything anybody wants? I mean, maybe that's coming into your better performance and scalability goal would be something other than Ether in a box.
Right. I think it's what's the next step after Ether in a box is what people are asking about, and maybe that's not. I mean, I think, like I said, Hyun-Soon, I think, has a good document about that, but I don't know if it's public yet.
Yeah. So I think that document it sort of involves high skill and knowledge, I think. It's not like you just run a command and you get a production and deployment. A lot of it was sort of, this is how things should be set up, not this is how to go set them up. I guess what I'm trying to describe, maybe it describes the end state, not the process.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a huge gap right now between Ether in a box on hardware and the Ether standalone edge that Hyunsoon documented. And I don't know if people are going to be able to bridge that gap.
Yeah, they kind of have to bring their own Hyunsoon to bridge that gap, I think. Okay, so if we could agree that these are the three top priorities, so 5G, ease of deployment, and then better performance and scalability. So I think we have a list of priorities.
5G falls under SD Core, correct? And SD Core has its own roadmap?
That's right, Zach.
But I mean, there's also an integration task though, because you need 5G well integrated with Ether. Though I think we had that.
I think
demoed that near the end.
so. When we say 5G, it's like more on the SDRAN side as well. So I guess, but when Andy says 5G has a more interest, I think Andy, you always talk only about SD core, right? Not on the SDRAN side.
Yeah, I think SD-RAN is its own thing. So when people want 5G, I don't think they're asking for SD-RAN.
Okay.
That would be my interpretation.
But is it the case that we support 5G, but we just haven't documented it well enough? Is this just a documentation thing, or do you have development tasks that you need to do, AJ?
So we do have the basic 5G, right? Now what we are working on, the performance and HA, all that thing we are working on currently, like multi-instance and supporting the database integration. That thing is in progress as of today.
Monitoring.
Yeah. Basic monitoring does exist just like the 4G, but we are working on those metric analytic thing, which is still not complete, but yeah, that is also one of the things we are doing for 5G.
Yeah, so basically we need to get 5G up to the point that 4G was at. And then it probably also needs documentation.
It does have, I mean, I think when Andy says that it's like 5G is more interest, that means people are working on 5G. That's what he means. Am I right, Andy? But whatever they need, those support exist in the SD core. What we are working on is that like little bit advanced, so that we can start supporting the redundancies or high call capacity in the 5G core. That's what we are working on now. So yeah, and the AIAB with the hardware, that mainly focused always on the 4G, and we might need to declare that same thing works for 5G as well. Because our current documentation highly says that use the Sericom eNode B and how it can be configured. So though that page talks about 4G, but all those things are equally applicable for 5G, right? So, but I don't see any, apart from the monitoring gap bridging, I don't think there is anything else a beginner user need from 5G. Or advanced user might need more thing, and that's what we are doing now.
Right, I agree. I think it's mainly a documentation issue and the monitoring part. I think people, would like to start by setting up an Ether in a box using 5G instead of 4G, but there's no instructions on how to set up a 5G G-Node B. Like there's extensive instructions on how to set up the Sericom eNode B. But can we recommend a specific G-Node B that people can use and provide similar instructions on how to configure it?
And we never had a production grade G-Node B. Well, we had
recently, Sericom had tested their G-Node B with the SD core, and they have shared one of the Excel file with us, which talks about what are the various configuration they did on the G-Node B, but not to the same level of depth whatever we have for the 4G, because we ourselves had configured it, right? But at least we can have the separate page for 5G, and whatever info we have, we can start putting it. Instead of just adding one single note within the 4G document saying that similar thing should work for 5G, I say that we should have the separate page And for initial stage, we can always tell people that they need to make sure that few things, whatever important things should be configured in the GNODB. And it's up to them how they configure GNODB. And once we get hand on some GNODB, then we can start populating that page. We should see if Eric, I mean, we should see if Timon can get Sericom GNODB for ONF or setting up somewhere in the lab. So that will help us into adding more document on the 5G side.
So where would we deploy such a thing? Would you set it up at Stanford?
I think Timon was talking about something like community labs and all. So he's probably he has some thoughts in his mind, like what is this community lab and who will host it, right? So there are a few things, but definitely ONF is not going to host it because there's no space.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if we can find some third party who can host it for us, and if we can get some GNODB from Sericom, then that would be a good starting point for us.
Okay, sounds good. So we have priorities now. What about the execution? So SD Core is continuing to work.
Yeah, towards AMF and SMF cloud native. That's the target for Pronto. So
Cloud native. And then you know, Andy continuing to do documentation. And
I think Andy and I need to work with the missing gap in the monitoring and then making sure those things are added. If I mean, I believe if that is what makes it more aligned, then yeah, we can make that as it seems to be something a smaller work compared to other items.
Right. Yeah, and then ONF's new people will help out and begin to take over processes. Anything else on execution? So it seems like we have a roadmap that we can share on these priorities, and then some reason to believe that we can start to achieve some of the goals on it. I think it's probably in our benefit not to put down dates when we will think we have these done, because it's hard to know how long it'll take us to get these things done. And then I guess a fourth priority would be start releasing again. Anything else people would like to talk about there, or we can take on this ONF ambassador topic? Okay, I think this is Denise's topic. I personally am not very familiar with the ambassador process at all. So maybe a little bit of background about the ONF ambassadors. I did see you posted like a list of who we had, but just what your sort of goals are to achieve and what you think they can do and what we can help with.
The ambassadors are really evangelists for various ONF projects. They go through a process to become approved as an ambassador. There's interviews to make sure that they have a technical understanding into one or more of the technologies that we're working on. And one of the things I went back and had emailed to you, Andy and Zach, is the 4 potential candidates I think who might be able to help us out on possibly documenting. We've had some issues with documentation. Of course, we'd want to clearly define what the help is we need from them. But one of the areas I'm pretty sure might be a challenge is getting an eNodeB to set up if we were asking them to help us out with documentation. So three of the candidates are with universities, and then the fourth is someone who's with Telefonica Brazil. But one in particular that's in Brazil, Ricardo Tombi, they actually have an ONF lab set up at his university. And I had asked him, in fact, he had inquired a while back about, what can we do to get Aether set up? But I'm pretty sure that in most of these cases, the hardware is going to be an issue. And I know that in our email string, I think Timon has some eNode B nodes. So that's one possibility, but whoever's, I would want to make sure that we kind of have some very specific things we would want to ask them for, and provide some guidance in the areas of documentation we feel need reviews or help. And then I'd also want to see if we might be able to, send a loaner, any loaner hardware they need, small cell hardware, and be able to get it back. So it'd have to be, some type of, probably send it out as a demo kind of thing, to make sure that we don't have to pay any of the taxes going back and forth. But that was my thought, is there, most of these folks are interested in finding out more about Aether, and if we could get a commitment, I think we'd want to carefully outline the what and when, what our expectations are before we sign them up. But it might be another resource for us to leverage in getting the work done by involving the community.
So how much use would it be to have them work on Aether in a box for developers without the eNode B, just the simulated environment? Maybe Andy, how big do you think the documentation gap is there, and how much could these ambassadors contribute to something like that?
So my general thinking about how people should get started with Aether is to go start with Aether in a box, and then move on from there to Aether in a box on real hardware, and then move on from there to a Aether standalone deployment that uses SRIOV and all those other things. So I think there is a pathway that we're trying to create. I think that overall the value that we would get from these people is by sending them down that pathway and seeing where they get stuck, or asking them, are there things that are confusing, and then I guess the follow-up would be, okay, well, figure out how to make it less confusing and submit some documentation patches. So I don't know to what extent in advance we want to try to carefully spec out like exactly how we want them to contribute to the documentation, because I feel like most of the value comes from seeing what they don't understand, and we don't know that in advance.
I think I was just really saying, to just make sure we have their commitment. Here are the things specifically we'd like your feedback on, because I agree with you. We don't want to tell them exactly, where we think there are some gaps. It's based on their feedback and experience, and then maybe even working with them if we had to get their help on the clarifications.
Yeah, so I think that sounds great. Yeah, and I would, if we don't have hardware for them right away, but they seem ready to go, I would point them at Aether in a box and say, bring this up, get really familiar with it, figure out if there's places in the documentation that don't make sense. And then maybe when they get hardware, they could move on to the Aether in a box with hardware and try that there, and just go through the whole pipeline. Maybe bring up the Aether standalone edge, or help us. The thing I'm worried about is how to bridge that gap between Aether in a box on hardware and the standalone edge, which seems, like we were saying, seems huge. So
right,
getting them to that point and then figuring out, showing them that document and saying, okay, does this make sense? And figuring out how it doesn't, I think would be really useful.
So yeah, much more documentation gap here. Now, can these people are they skilled enough to do actual development
Don't know.
mean-
I mean, I think we'd have to probably just asking if they're interested in setting it up and so forth. I just know that they've asked questions about it. How ready they are to jump on it, I couldn't tell you because I didn't want to
Okay.
push that button until we were ready to try and do something, engage with them.
So asking them to do something like, you know, update either in a box to bring up a 5G simulated environment, that would be too big a leap.
Probably.
Okay.
So I just wanted to find out, you know, who I might be able to kind of work with. So I want to outline maybe the phases of what we could reasonably ask them. And I want to be explicit because if we're not, you know, garbage in, garbage out, I want to make sure we're explicit on what we are asking of them and make sure I point them to the specific documentation areas that will help them and just, you know, I just slowly bring them along. I think this could be more of a process, not a one and done, but, you know, perhaps if we could bring them along. And like I said, I know Ricardo already has a lab set up and I'm not sure about the others, but the folks that are here are all folks that have engaged pretty regularly. They do go out and present about ONF projects. They are, you know, more active in the program with us. So that was the reason for selecting them. And plus 3 of them are associated with universities. And, you know, hopefully I only know of 1 so far that definitely has a lab. I'm not sure of the other 2. So I just want to try to see if we might be able to, you know, hook some of these folks in and leverage them, you know, better than we are now.
Yeah, I think getting them, you know, pointing them to the docs, and
Yeah.
having them execute that workflow. And then not just, you know, point out to Andy where it needs improvement, but if they can actually contribute patches themselves to improve it, that'd be even greater.
Yeah. Okay. So should I work, Andy, should I work with you on just kind of putting together an email to specifically discuss this, make sure I have the right links? Does that make sense to send to these individuals to see if we can engage with them?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? I think we've reached the bottom of the agenda. Okay. If there's nothing more, I think we're ending about on time. We can go ahead and adjourn. We will resume in 2 weeks, and I will be here for the meeting. I think you said it was tomorrow at noon.
Yes, I sent the invite out already.
Okay, good. The sooner I can get it on the calendar, the sooner I can be prevented from it getting scheduled by somebody else. Perfect. Okay, well, it's nice seeing everyone again, and we'll talk to you all again in 2 weeks, if not sooner.
Okay, thanks much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.